Hi everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to your new moon forecast for the new moon in Libra that's going to happen on the 6th of October 2021. So as usual, I'm going to be looking at the next 2 weeks of the waxing moon phase. Quite a lot going on. I think you're going to feel a huge shift in energy as we move out of that kind of Pisces full moon sort of phase that we had, which was very Neptune laden and quite, it was almost like kind of walking through like thick fog, and I think you're going to feel a noticeable shift as we come up to this this new moon and we move into a lot of cardinal energy. A lot of the outer planets are going direct, and both Mercury and Mars feature quite strongly in this particular new moon. So it's almost like get ready, because it's pedal to the metal, like the thrusts are being sort of like added to the rocket, and I think this is going to kind of bode quite well for Bitcoin, but I'll do a separate forecast for that. In the meantime, let's see what we can look forward to from the astrology point of view. So in terms of overall energy, as I said, we're moving into cardinal air energy, so this is kind of yang energy, and it's very much about making decisions, taking the initiative, particularly in things like legal matters, relationships, equal rights issues, peace talks, politics, that kind of thing. Anything that requires balance or that requires two parties to kind of come together and compromise. There's a sense of real kind of energy and purpose in this particular new moon because of the Mercury and Mars that will both be in Libra, and they'll be making a stellium with the Sun and the Moon at this new moon. In fact, Mars is going to be pretty close to both the Sun and the Moon, and that's really going to be adding a kind of an acceleration aspect to whatever happens now. So it's really sort of giving a sense of energy and purpose to whatever we do, particularly our decisions, taking action, initiating. So this is, as I said, it's kind of masculine yang energy, and if you add in to this the fact that the outer planets will be sort of going direct, we've already, well, on the same day actually as the new moon, Pluto goes direct, and then a few days later on the 11th Saturn will go direct, and then the week after that we'll have Mercury and Jupiter go direct on the same day, around about the 18th. So as these planets start to go forward, we're going to come out of that slightly more kind of apathetic energy that we had over the summer, so from kind of like May onwards, and we're really going to kind of enter a time of forward momentum where we're going to want to take charge, to make changes, and to kind of make things happen. So this is real kind of go get 'em kind of energy. And so, as I said, like on the same day as this new moon, we've got Pluto going direct, and so it will end its retrograde spell that it began around about the 28th of May or so. Now this is interesting because it happened the day after the Scorpio supermoon, and of course Pluto rules the Scorpio, sort of the sign of Scorpio. So there may be something important about that particular supermoon that you want to go back and have a look at in April to see whether, on some level something's kind of shifting. When Pluto's retrograde, the energy tends to sort of move inwards, and we tend to be thinking about change on the internal kind of planes. Once Pluto goes direct, then things start to happen in the outer world. So it could be that whatever you were sort of incubating from that Scorpio supermoon now starts to be expressed in the outer world. So something to be aware of, but definitely I think in terms of making changes and things, going forward, making reforms, taking action in the world, empowering oneself, all these kind of Pluto themes. I think it's time now to sort of take action, to take the initiative going forward in the outer world. And of course this is a new moon, so we are talking about waxing energy. We're talking about fresh starts, planting seeds, and starting new things. And then as I said, we do have this stellium in Libra of the luminaries Mars and Mercury, and this is all about eliminating delays, injustices, indecisiveness. So as I say, particularly during that Pisces, the 2-week Pisces waning moon, really sort of talk about feeling kind of stuck out, drifting at sea. So I think it's almost like the onboard motor sort of kind of jolts back into life, and we now are kind of ready to motor across the ocean and to really get things done and cover distance. So there's a lot here about eliminating delays and a strong need to also fix imbalances of any kind, because of course we are talking about Libra, which is the sign of the scales of justice. So a strong need to actually take action to right wrongs, to rectify problems, to bring things more into balance. Now in terms of relationships, obviously, you know, when we are talking about Libra, there's a strong emphasis on relationships. Libra season to a large extent really emphasizes those kind of Venusian qualities in terms of Venus in her air element. So Venus herself is going to be ingressing into Sagittarius on the 7th of October, so the day after this new moon. And I think we're going to feel a real shift in energy out of that dark, slightly intense energy of Scorpio and into the much lighter-hearted, adventurous and expansive energy of Sagittarius. So a real shift in energy, I think, from really quite a sort of depressed, almost kind of dark or hopeless space. You know, if we think of what was going on in the world, suddenly there was a lot of uncertainty. You know, everyone was wondering if China was suddenly going to have a kind of a property crash, and you know, was this going to cause a sort of global economic meltdown? And then we had what was going on in America, and you know, people not really being able to kind of make up their minds, or sort of deliberately delaying things like the stimulus bill, which was also kind of causing a lot of uncertainty. And I think, you know, we're going to feel a real shift into that very positive mutable fire energy of Sagittarius. And I think, you know, the other thing is that Venus is going to be making tons of positive aspects to the outer planets throughout October, starting with a wonderful sextile to Saturn on the 13th of October. So yes, I'll be looking forward to that. My birthday is, you know, not far off that. Yes, so lots to look forward to, I think, when it comes to relationships. And as I say, if things have been a little bit off balance or off kilter in some way, or there's been kind of an injustice, or, you know, any kind of misunderstandings that have arisen during Mercury Retrograde, which was also in the sign of Libra, then, you know, this is a real opportunity to sort of take swift action to sort of rectify those things. So in terms of the Sabian symbol, we're looking at the 14th degree of Libra, which is almost midway, you know, through the zodiac sign. So kind of at that halfway point, which I think is interesting, considering that we're talking about kind of balance and, you know, trying to find this sort of the middle ground. So the Sabian symbol for this is, in the heat of noon, a man takes a siesta. Now, of course, this seems to sort of stand in stark contrast to what I was saying about it being all kind of go, 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 you know, with the outer planets kind of going direct, and with Mars and Mercury, the two kind of movers and shakers of the zodiac, I mean, of the kind of planetary pantheon, being so keyed into this new moon. But I think really what it's asking us to do is, things are probably going to get quite busy now, and I think what it's telling us to do is to make sure that we build into our schedules time to rest. So if you think about the fact that we're talking about the heat of noon, we're talking about halfway through the day. In astrological terms, this is when the sun reaches the midheaven, and I think what it's kind of saying is that we need to build breaks into our day to make sure that we can pace ourselves, so that we can kind of keep going for longer, and not burn out. You know, I think there's always the potential, you know, to kind of burn out, particularly when Mars is very prominent. So I think it's really telling us to take care of our schedule, not to sort of pack our day with too much in the way of activity, to also make sure that we get good sleep, so not kind of caning it at night if we're working very hard during the day, and to also just bear in mind that certainly in the northern hemisphere anyway, we're moving into winter, so there are fewer daylight hours, and that just does affect first of all, your circadian rhythms, and secondly, your testosterone levels, because we get a lot of testosterone, you know, from sun exposure, and so that does tend to make us physically more tired. We don't necessarily always have as much physical energy, and I think that's also just worth bearing in mind, that you may not be able to kind of go hell for leather in the same way that you can during the summer months. So, you know, just sort of being realistic in terms of how much you can achieve, you know, every day. There may also, on the kind of negative side, be a need to have a look at and sort of tweak one's schedule if we're kind of wasting time procrastinating, or if something is draining us of energy. So maybe getting rid of activities that drain us of energy and replacing them with things that really kind of allow us to recharge our batteries, if you like, and to keep going, that inspires us and sort of keeps us going, and also to balance, you know, work with play. I think that's also a really important point here. There may also be a need on some level to briefly kind of withdraw. You know, I've kind of included a picture of a man kind of meditating, and it may be that on some level, if there has been some problems that have been caused during Mercury retrograde, for example, that it might be a good idea to sort of set that aside for a little bit, and or just set aside time to to kind of think about things or to take stock, but not to really spend too much time outside of the action, because as I say, I think that from here on in, kind of right through until the end of December, things are going to get quite busy. So I think that's just worth kind of bearing in mind. Now, in terms of the chart, we can see that we've got the sun and the moon with that stellium essentially up in the 10th house, so quite visible. It's very public. The 10th house is all about being in the world, achieving status, career. So it's very much that kind of go-getting, outwardly focused energy. And to have the sun and the moon with Mercury and with Mars, as I said, this is a real kind of combination of a go-getter, like someone who's a mover and a shaker, who's an entrepreneur. I think quite strongly of the Emperor, but as I say, this is real kind of rocket fuel type of energy. And even though Mercury is retrograde, it will go direct with sort of by the 18th of October. It will be direct. So I think the way to view this energy, sort of just with that retrograde in mind, is to say that if there are things that we have regretted about what's kind of gone down during Mercury retrograde, because don't forget that we had that beautiful Mercury went sort of reversed over Speaker, which was such incredible energy, and there was so much potential there for kind of brilliance. But then, as it did so, it also went back towards Pluto. Mercury was making squares to Pluto, and then kind of trining Jupiter. So it was kind of bobbing between the positive energy of Jupiter and the really sort of like difficult, challenging, quite intimidating energy of Pluto. So yes, sort of like a real kind of double whammy, if you like, or sort of having to navigate that energy quite carefully. And I think that if you did kind of like make mistakes, or you did stumble, or things didn't necessarily turn out quite the way you planned, then I think, given that Mercury's retrograde here but Mars isn't, that there is perhaps the potential to sort of rectify, to sort of tweak and to immediately make adjustments, just to sort of keep the ball rolling, if you like, and to make sure that that any kind of oversights or mishaps or sort of missteps don't get in the way of the bigger picture. Because as I said, that there is this real kind of get up and go energy. If you look, you can see that that the outer planets are also kind of coming off of, well, the sun and the moon are coming off of sort of a trine to Saturn, and they're applying to Jupiter. So it's interesting that the luminaries are kind of bobbing between the sort of the malefic and the benefic. So they are kind of bobbing between Jupiter and Saturn, and Mercury is sort of bobbing between Jupiter and Pluto. So again, I think it's this balancing act that we're being asked to kind of do, where we're being asked to kind of balance what needs to be kind of cut out or removed, or perhaps toned down, or sort of dampened, what's not kind of working. And here I'm thinking about Pluto and Saturn, and then to augment with what is working, or with what feels good, or with the potential of kind of expansion with Jupiter. So yes, I think just something to bear in mind, that this is going to be a little bit of a juggling act, which I think is again very in keeping with Libra, which is that kind of dual energy. And then the luminaries will also be making an opposition to Chiron and Aries, and again this is also potentially about trying to find ways to heal kind of wounds, particularly around kind of warrior wounds, the masculine energy. There may be, you might kind of feel a little bit pulled, there may be a part of you that feels a little bit wounded, or that has kind of had a few ego blows, or it's just not kind of operating at sort of full capacity, and try not to sort of let that hold you back too much, because on the positive side, the luminaries are also making a trine to Black Moon Lilith, and of course she is the sort of, for me anyway, she's the feminine equivalent of Chiron, so she's the dark side of the moon, so she's about that kind of dark feminine energy. And as we'll see, well, if you haven't watched this already, but as you'll see from my the forecast that I've done for the upcoming full moon in the eclipse that we're having in Taurus in November, these are strong themes that are coming up for that eclipse. So I think you might find that things start to kind of constellate over the period of this kind of waxing moon cycle, that you might start to kind of identify what those particular themes might be for you, that you can then perhaps work on and sort of finally put to bed or ground or manifest, or whatever when we come to that eclipse. So that's the other thing to consider. And then so Black Moon Lilith is this is the point, is Black Moon Lilith is sitting on the North Node, and of course the nodal axis is interesting because we've got Venus on the other side, and of course Venus is the ruler of Libra, and Venus is about to change signs. It's about to move into, as I said, Sagittarius, which is the sign of the South Node. So on some level there may be a need with these two kind of fairly dark feminine energies of Venus in Scorpio and then Black Moon Lilith with the North Node, of eliminating or somehow kind of balancing or concluding any themes that might be kind of around in terms of how to kind of reconcile ourselves to our more kind of shadow feminine aspects. So these may be how to express rage, passive aggressiveness. It could be projecting onto other people. It could be that side of us that's a little bit sort of bitchy and cutting. It could also be where we tend to sort of keep secrets, or we find it difficult to express ourselves in a sort of a very healthy or kind of direct way. And then with Black Moon Lilith, I think we're being asked to kind of maybe be a bit less secretive and a bit more open, because we're talking about Gemini energy with the North Node here. So I think maybe potentially sort of saying there's a need to kind of ground your more kind of shadow side with the South Node being close to the Earth, but then on the other side with the North Node in Gemini, we're also being asked to be kind of more open-minded, to communicate better, because of course Gemini is the ultimate communicator, and given this emphasis of Mercury in the stellium with the Sun and the Moon being retrograde in Libra, it may be that we need to be more open in communicating within relationships. Maybe we need to be a little bit fairer when it comes to the decisions that we make, or the way that we sort of address others, or the way that we think in terms of kind of other people. Yes, but there definitely seems to be something here about balancing perspectives and outlooks with communication and information. So it could also have something to do with the way that we kind of process and use information, that needs to have a little bit of an adjustment. And again, it's interesting that we're talking about an axis again, and this idea of kind of the Libra scales, trying to find a balance between these two things, because that's usually where you find your sweet spot, is somewhere in the middle. Yes, so those are kind of the main energies. As I said, we are going to have a lot of planets going direct. So just those dates again. So on the 6th, we've got Pluto stationing. Then on the 11th, Saturn will move direct, followed by Mercury and Jupiter on the 18th. So as I say, as those outer planets start to go direct, I think we're really going to notice a shift in the energies, and we're going to see an end to blocks, delays, restrictions, limitations, anything of that nature, and things are really going to start kind of happening in the outer world. So we need to be ready for that, and I think that's what the Sabian symbol was kind of asking us to do, was just to prepare ourselves both psychologically and from a health perspective, so that we're able to kind of keep pace, and don't burn out too soon. Yeah. So in terms of your kind of cheat sheet, I've prepared the breakdown as usual for where you can make some fresh starts, press the reset button, or where you need to do this particular work that I've been talking about. So again, this is new moon energy, so we're talking about one house or one life area. No need to look at two. So just find your rising sign or your ascendant on on the chart, and then look to the life area that I've kind of identified, and you'll see what area it is where you can really make the most of this particular potential, the potential of this new moon in order to make some positive changes in your life. So now with fixed star aspects, we don't have any particular aspects between the fixed stars and the luminaries, but we do have a couple of interesting sort of fixed star aspects that happen with some of the other planets like Venus, Uranus and Chiron, and all of them seem to have this theme running through them of a need to really learn important life lessons and to do some shadow work, essentially, to really kind of get to grips with conquering the shadow. Now this has been coming up since the Leo new moon that we had at that Lionsgate portal, and there's been a lot over the last couple of months. If you think about Uranus being with Menkar, which is in Cetus the whale, which is all about coming to terms with the unconscious and with the need to try and sort of get on top of being triggered, or subconscious patterns that might tend to sort of overtake our behavior, or just those fears that we might have of being overwhelmed, devoured, or somehow not be able to kind of cope with uncertainty or change. Now it's interesting that Uranus is the only planet that will be retrograde by the time we get to mid-October. Uranus will be retrograde for some months to come, but it will, by the time we get to, as I say, mid-October, it will be the only outer planet that will be retrograde. So that really kind of singles it out in a way, and I think given that it is still in Cetus the whale, we can see Cetus the whale here, the sea monster, there may be still something here that we're kind of still working through as a collective when it comes to that kind of monster energy of the unconscious. And Uranus for me strongly rules things like sort of political reform, revolution, and of course technology. So I still feel that on some level we're kind of grappling with that. If you think within the crypto space, there's a lot of this kind of happening and changing, but at the same time this requires us to really kind of update our outlooks, our philosophies, our ethics, and to really kind of question the sort of the paradigm in which we want these changes to unfold, so that they are kind of positive. Because don't forget that we've still got that final square aspect that's going to happen between Saturn and Uranus in late December. So we haven't finished with those themes yet, and of course that's been the sort of overarching major theme that we all as a collective are currently wrestling with, is this tension between the old and the new, and how to sort of get the best out of both in a way that doesn't feel too much like we're kind of deferring or not wanting to make change on the one hand, and sort of constantly deferring to tradition or allowing old systems to persist that have really outworn their sell-by date on the one hand, but then on the other hand not just kind of doing change for change's sake, because if you think about Uranus is very much associated with the sickle, and this is kind of decapitating energy, or sort of it cuts things like off quite abruptly. And sometimes you need more of a kind of a gradual transition in order for things not to destabilize too much, so the structures don't destabilize. So think about the tower, for example, as a kind of image. And so I think there's something important here about really trying to stay as self-aware and as mindful of where we can kind of get trapped or not see things, both individually and collectively, 100% clearly, because of this kind of shadow of the unconscious that on some level may be making us feel threatened, maybe make us just feel that we want to kind of move into kind of knee-jerk reactions, as I say, like change for change's sake. So that's something to be aware of. And then interestingly, we've also got Venus conjunct Ptolemy. Now this is part of the constellation of Centaurus, and this is associated with both the myth of Chiron and of Pholos, which these are both centaurs, so they are kind of half man, half beast. And as I've mentioned before, when we've had fixed star aspects, around this, I think there was one at that Scorpio new moon that we had around about the time of the November 2020 elections, and I said that there's something interesting about this idea of the half man, half beast. In a way, it kind of represents man. You know, we are a kind of a hybrid between our kind of animal instincts, our base instincts on the one hand, and our kind of high instincts on the other. You know, that kind of divide between the upper and the lower chakras. And there seems to be something here about the need to bring those together through love, you know, Venus being the sort of the great reconciler. So there's something here about kind of learning lessons, important life lessons, and also healing ourselves, so healing that schism. You know, there may be some kind of disassociation kind of happening due to perhaps trauma or fright, or just sort of feeling a little bit paralyzed, or of righting wrongs, which, you know, as I've said, it could be a big theme with, you know, the new moon being in Libra. Now with Venus, this can also be about questioning beliefs, values and assumptions, and this is a theme that we'll see kind of played out as we move through the last 3 months of the year. There's a lot here about kind of beliefs, values, assumptions, and our kind of outlook, and learning important life lessons. And then what's also interesting here is that we take this link to Centaurus, and we see that Chiron is making an aspect to Bellatrix, and of course Bellatrix is Bellatrix sits in the left arm of Orion, the sort of the warrior. So Bellatrix is associated with a she warrior, or the Amazon woman. And isn't it interesting that we've got this very strong connection here between, first of all, Venus and Bellatrix on the one hand, so these two kind of feminine energies. If we think about Libra as being a kind of masculine form of femininity, you know, Venus expresses herself in her feminine form in Taurus, but she expresses herself in her masculine form in Libra. And then we also have this link between Venus being in Ptolemy, which, as I said, is the constellation of Centaurus, and we have this link to Chiron, which is in the constellation of Bellatrix. So there's something here about the sort of feminine possibly empowerment, or the way that the feminine is able to assert herself. Because so often what happens, you know, particularly with the fixed star Bellatrix, is there are often strong themes here about success through conquering the shadow. So very often, in order to sort of succeed and to come out of the shadow, of the kind of come out from the shadows, if you like, and come fully into the light, there's a need to heal aspects of our psyche, a need to face one's demons, and to come to terms with personal weaknesses. And here I will kind of add that you know, I also kind of have my misgivings sometimes with this kind of universal idea of integrating the shadow, because of the work of Jung versus the work of Corbin. You know, I'm a huge fan of the work of Henri Corbin, and he where he kind of differed or departed from Jung is that he didn't feel that we should be trying to sort of like heal our psyche in the sense of reconcile our kind of unconscious stuff with our kind of our conscious stuff. So, you know, like that kind of half man, half beast. For Corbin, it was about mastering the beast. And yeah, I mean, kind of, you know, the jury's out. So for him, it was about the fact that there were 3 levels, not 2. And so there's a need to move away from the kind of the unconscious towards what he called the superconscious, and to kind of to master our kind of lower selves. Whereas for Jung only saw sort of 2, the kind of the dual energy of, you know, kind of the dark and the light, the masculine and the feminine, the you know, the kind of the anima and the animals, that kind of thing. So yeah, I mean, jury's kind of out. I do sometimes wonder how much of this is still rooted in the West's obsession with the kind of warrior archetype, that we have to kind of conquer and dominate everything, and whether there's perhaps a more kind of loving and less violent way of kind of going about things. And, you know, it's interesting that it's coming up at a time when Venus is very, very prominent. So and Venus will be sort of ingressing into the sign of Sagittarius, which is also the centaur, but it's the sort of the archer. So it's the kind of more of the warlike centaur. You know, so yeah, there's something very interesting here, I think, and it'll be fascinating to see what happens over the course of the next 2 weeks as to what comes up in the outer world, particularly, you know, for the collective, in terms of themes. You know, whether there's a need for us to sort of rethink a few things when it comes to how we integrate the sort of the other, the feminine, the shadow, how we kind of come to terms with that, or with our kind of more bestial nature, if you like, the part of us that is more like nature. Does nature really need to be kind of dominated? Does nature need to be conquered? Is nature all bad? I think it's kind of interesting. So yeah, we'll see what happens over the next couple of weeks. I think it might be interesting, particularly as we move into Scorpio season too, because that is so strongly associated with that kind of dark feminine energy of the sort of deep waters and roots in the ground and that kind of thing. But yeah, it's just worth kind of bearing in mind. So yeah, it's short and sweet, but that's really a summary of the main kind of energies that are going to be in play for the next couple of weeks. Just to say that I have already launched my lunar eclipse in Taurus forecast, which you can catch on YouTube, and I will shortly be doing my December 2021 eclipse horoscopes for members of my website. So if that's something that you're interested in getting access to, then think about going to my website and just signing up for my newsletter. It's I don't charge anything for the service, but I don't put my eclipse horoscopes in the public domain. So if that's something that you'd like access to, it gives you a sort of a themes for the next 6 months, then think about signing up. But yeah, I'm wishing you all the very best for the upcoming waxing moon cycle, and I'll catch you again mid-October for the full moon forecast.